In this video, we're going to discuss plant cells, tissues, and organs. And we'll compare those as we're talking to animal cells, tissues, and organs. First of all, plants have 4 different types of tissue. They have dermal tissue, so that's like our skin, so the epidermal cells. Ground tissue, that makes up the bulk of the inside of the plant. There's meristematic tissue, so that is what grows, and then the vascular tissue, and there's 2 different kinds. There's the xylem and the phloem. So xylem cells carry water through the plant, and phloem carries sugar solutions through the plant. So meristematic tissue are regions that contain cells that can still undergo mitosis, and that's where growth happens. And growth in a plant occurs at the root and the shoot or the stem tips. So all these little yellow sections here are the places where growth can still happen. So that's meristematic tissue. You can see here some plants also have cells that can divide here to make the stem get thicker and thicker. Those are plants that live for multiple years. So a tree, and you can actually count the rings to see how many years the tree has grown, because every year it puts out a new ring. The second type of tissue is dermal tissue. So that's the protective cell layers, and that's very similar to our layer of skin. This is a picture, this is my lovely picture of a leaf. I've taken a cross section here and then put somebody else's diagram in here. So the very top, the red section, is waxy cuticle. So leaves actually cover themselves in wax to keep them from losing water. Then below that, so it's not actually cells, it's actually molecules. Below that, the yellow section is the epidermis, or the dermal tissue. So its job is to act like the skin. It's the protective layer. And then these things here, stomata, they open and close to let air and water and gases out and in. And then the stuff in the middle is the ground tissue and the vascular tissue. The ground tissue makes up most of the plant's internal structure, and there's cells and tissues that specialize to perform different functions. So there's the palisade mesophyll cells that you'll learn more about in grade 11 biology. They're responsible for doing photosynthesis. Some of them might be responsible for storing nutrients and starch, for instance. Each of them have different jobs. The vascular tissue, that might make you think about the cardiovascular system. It's kind of like the circulatory system of a plant, except plants don't have a heart like we do. So it's the transport system for the plant. And there's 2 different transport things. So xylem, it carries the water from the roots, so down here, all the way through the rest of the plant, out to the leaves and so on. The phloem, so the leaves are the main place where plants make their own food through photosynthesis, and the food is in the form of sugar. So the phloem will carry the sugars throughout the rest of the plant and store it in the roots if it needs to store some for later. And roots often will store that energy, that food, in the form of starch, which is why some root vegetables are starchy. They have more starch in them, like beets and so on. So plant organs. In plants, the different types of tissues will be organized into plant organs. We have a lot more different types of organs than plants do. They only have about 3 or 4. For instance, the flower. So, and not every plant even has a flower, but the ones that do, that's going to be the location of the plant's reproductive organs. The stigma and the style, and the ovaries, and so on. The leaf performs photosynthesis. It provides oxygen and food to heterotrophs and provides shade and camouflage for other organisms. And it's what keeps the plant alive because it provides itself its own food as well. This is a cross-section of a leaf. We saw one already. So again, the cuticle is made out of wax. This is the upper epidermis. This is the palisade mesophyll, the spongy mesophyll. Those are the ground tissues. So the spongy mesophil's job is to store air in the pockets around it. It's not as tightly packed, so there's all these air spaces. And the palisade mesophyll is very tightly packed together and very like vertical and rectangular, because that's the part that's going to do photosynthesis. You want to have every surface possible doing photosynthesis. And then this is the vein, so that's where the xylem and the phloem would be, and that's the lower epidermis. And then stomata. One is called a stoma. So it opens and closes to let air and gases and water vapor and so on in and out. The stem's job is to support the plant and hold the plant up to the light. Some plants have more rigid stems than others. That allows them sometimes to grow taller than others. And in the stem are both the xylem and the phloem. Their job is to conduct the water and the nutrients throughout the plant and throughout the stem and deliver it to the roots or the leaves. The roots' job is to anchor the plant in the soil. So that's one really important job of the root, but it also needs to absorb water. That the leaves need photosynthesis, and all the cells need water as well. And it stores starch produced by the leaves for later use.